All right, let's begin. So, we will focus primarily on Egypt and the Nile River. So, Egypt, officially the Arab Republic of Egypt, is a country spanning the northwest east corner of Africa and the southwest corner of Asia via the Sinai Peninsula. It is bordered by the Mediterranean Sea to the north and the Gaza Strip of Palestine and Israel to the northeast, and the Red Sea to the east, and the Sudan to the south, and Libya to the west. Egypt has one of the longest histories of any country, tracing its heritage along the Nile Delta back to the 6th and 4th millennia BCE. Considering considered a cradle of civilization, ancient Egypt saw some of the earliest developments of writing, agriculture, urbanization, organized religion, and centralized government. Egypt has an early and important center of Christianity, later adopting Islam for the 7th century onwards. It then became part of the Ottoman Empire until its local ruler of Muhammad Ali established modern Egypt as autonomous in 1867. The country was then occupied by the British along with Sudan and gained independence in 1922 as a monarchy. Egypt is considered a developing country with the second largest economy in Africa. It is considered a regional power in the Middle East, North Africa, and the Muslim world, and a middle power worldwide. Islam is its official religion, and Arabic is official language. So, before we begin, has anyone been to Egypt? Has anyone done this Nile River cruise that we will be doing virtually? Feel free to unmute yourself or put questions and comments in the chat. Nope. Okay. Well, good. Learning for everyone. So we move on to the Nile itself. Egypt owes much of its success to the Nile, a river as enduring as it is vital. From early human history, its waters have served as a lifeline, fostering one of the world's earliest and most influential civilizations, that being ancient Egypt. It provided fertile land, water for irrigation, and transportation for its people and materials. Amid the vast and desolate Sahara Desert, vibrant cities have long flourished along the banks of the river. The name Nile comes from the Greek word and name for the river god Nilos, which is derived from the Semitic word Nahal, meaning valley or river valley. The Nile flows northward for approximately 6,650 kilometers, or a little over 4,000 miles, and is the longest river on Earth. Today, some 95% of the Egyptian population live along its banks or within several miles of the river. The Nile River is formed by three tributaries: the Blue Nile, the Atarba, and the White Nile. The Blue Nile and the Atarba originate near Ethiopia's Lake Tana, while the White Nile begins in South Sudan. From there, the river, once combined, the river flows northward as one to Cairo. And in Cairo, the Nile divides into two main branches before emptying into the Mediterranean Sea. Living along the Nile River required adapting to the annual floods that it has, which typically occurred in July and August. As floodwaters receded, they left behind silt deposits enriching the soil for agriculture. In an otherwise barren landscape, it was once believed the floods signaled the arrival of Hapi, the god of fertility, often depicted as a chubby man with a blue or green skin. The Nile was so central to Egyptian life that their calendar year began with the first month of flooding. Today, the Nile's water volume is decreasing due to factors such as climate change, induced droughts, and the shrinking of Lake Victoria, one of the Nile's major water resources. The UN warns that Egypt may face a severe water scarcity as early as this year. So now we will begin our river cruise, starting in Cairo, the capital of Egypt and one of Africa's largest cities. Situated along the Nile River, Cairo has stood for over 1,000 years and is home to more than 10 million people. and I will now pass it over to everyone's favorite tour guide, Rick Steves.
Cairo is a fascinating clash between traditional and modern, religious and secular.
Can everyone hear that?
Yes, we can hear.
Yes,
Great.
it's good.
Coming in good.
East and west. While its chaos can be exasperating, it can also be a rewarding challenge for the adventurous traveler. Cairo's downtown is modern and can feel European. Streets, squares, and grand buildings are reminders of the country's colonial past from the 19th and early 20th centuries. The riverfront throbs with energy, stately bridges busy with traffic, fancy riverside restaurants, and towering apartment complexes. The Nile is still the lifeblood of the city, sprawling endlessly on both sides. The heart of Cairo is Tahrir Square. It's long been ground zero for the people's spirit. If there's a demonstration going on, and there have been massive ones in recent years, it's likely here. In addition to its political energy, the city's long been a religious capital. Ever since the forces of Islam swept across North Africa from Arabia in the 7th century, spreading the teachings of their prophet Muhammad, Cairo has been a leading city of the Muslim world. And today, Cairo's known as the City of 1,000 Minarets. Stepping into Al Hussein Mosque, like any neighborhood mosque, you'll find a worshipful tranquility. It's believed that resting here invigorates the soul. There's more intensity around the adjacent shrine, believed to contain a sacred relic, the head of Al Hussein ibn Ali, a grandson of the Prophet Muhammad. In a mosque, men and women worship separately. As praying can be physical, with lots of bending over, it's considered more respectful to allow women their own space. I find that a respectful tourist is welcome to be a part of the scene.
Okay, now we'll take a look at some other Cairo landmarks. We start with the Museum of Egyptian Antiquities. Now known commonly as the Egyptian Museum, located near Tahrir Square, it houses a vast collection of over 120,000 antiquities, including royal mummies and the treasures of King Tutankhamun's tomb. Much of the collection of the Museum of Egyptian Antiquities, including the King Tut collection, are slated to be moved to a new grand Egyptian museum under construction in Giza and was due to open at the end of 2020. But for now, will officially open in July of this year. Al-Azhar University, established in 970 AD, is one of the oldest and most prestigious Islamic universities in the world. It was founded as a mosque by the Fatimid commander Jawir al-Sakili. The caliphs always encouraged scholars and jurists to have their study circles and gatherings in this mosque, and thus it was turned into a madrasa. The mosque provided teaching on a variety of subjects from a variety of scholars, and today it continues to thrive as a modern university, offering a variety of undergraduate and graduate degrees. It is the chief center of Arabic literature and Islamic learning in the world. Its library is considered second in importance in Egypt only to the Egyptian National Library and Archives. The Cairo Tower is situated on the island of Gezira in the Nile River. Opened to the public in 1961, it's regarded as one of the most famous modern monuments in Cairo. Standing at 614 feet or 187 meters high, it was for a period of about 50 years regarded as the tallest structure in Egypt and North Africa as a whole. The tower is a freestanding tower with a revolving restaurant at the top and provides a bird's eye view of the city to restaurant patrons. Across from Cairo, on the west bank of the Nile River, we have the city of Giza. It's Egypt's third largest city with a population of around 5 million. Giza always has been a focal point in Egyptian history due to its location close to Memphis, the ancient pharaonic capital of the Old Kingdom. Giza is most famous, of course, for the location of the Giza Plateau and the site of the most impressive ancient monuments in the world.
We finally reach the desert and the site that draws most tourists to Egypt, the pyramids at Giza, one of the most recognizable scenes in all of tourism. Towering before us are the tombs of three great kings or pharaohs. These monuments were built to mark and to protect the bodies of fabulously wealthy and powerful pharaohs. They spent a good part of their lives and their kingdom's wealth building huge pyramids, which served as lockers for whatever they wanted to take into the afterlife. Their bodies, their treasures, even their favorite pets. The pyramid of the pharaoh Cheops is the only survivor of the seven wonders of the ancient world. This grandest of all pyramids, 700 feet long on each side, was built 2,500 years before Christ. The neighboring pyramids are likely those of Cheops' son and grandson. The smaller ones, they're for the wives and daughters. Experts guess that with 10,000 laborers hard at work, it took 20 years to build the Pyramid of Cheops. According to my abacus, that's 200,000 man-years of hard labor. Workers dragged over 2 million huge stones up ramps, eventually constructing this 450-foot-high monument. In their day, the pyramids were encased in a shiny limestone veneer. I sure hope Cheops was satisfied. Long, secret corridors, originally blocked by sliding stones, lead to the tomb chamber deep in the center of each pyramid. Climbing this passage, you marvel at the design and the audacity of the project. Finally, reaching the burial room, you're hit by the thought that this was the most sacred and precious chamber in the ancient world, silent for 4,000 years, until the arrival of tourism. This is it, the center of this massive pyramid. The pharaoh's mummy was put in this stone sarcophagus. The sarcophagus is bigger than the passageway, so this must have been here first, and then the pyramid built around it. This huge chamber was filled with treasures. A little shaft was designed into the pyramid to provide an escape passage for the soul of the pharaoh. For the pharaoh, the most important treasure was his soul, which needed to be free for the ascent to the afterlife. Back outside, complementing the scene, is the mysterious Sphinx. As old as the pyramids, it was carved out of a piece of hard rock that stuck above the limestone plateau. With the body of a lion and the head of a king or god, it came to symbolize both strength and wisdom as it faces east and the rising sun. The Sphinx faces the promise of the rising sun, and so does Cairo, as Egypt's ancient story continues to unfold. Thanks for joining us. I'm Rick Steves. Until next time, keep on traveling. We finally reach the desert.
All right. From Giza, we will hop onto our cruise boat and travel down the river for 11 days till we reach our next major port city, that being Luxor. But along the way, there are some sights to see. One being Beni Suef. The city is the location of a university and an important agricultural trade center on the west bank of the Nile River. The city is located 70 miles south of Cairo and known for its exquisite rug weaving and stately mansions. Local landmarks include the Medium Pyramid. Amarna is an extensive ancient Egyptian archaeological site containing the remains of what was the capital city during the late 18th dynasty. The city of Akhenaten was established in 1346 BC and built at the direction of the pharaoh Akhenaten and abandoned shortly after his death in 1332. The name that the ancient Egyptians used for the city is translated as Akhenaten, or the horizon of the Aten. And what is a vacation without food? Egyptian cuisine shares similarities with the cuisine of Eastern Mediterranean through the incorporation of ingredients such as dates, nuts, chickpeas, and spices. Lamb and beef are frequently used for grilling. Fish and seafood are more common in Egyptian's coastal regions. A significant amount of Egyptian cuisine is vegetarian due to both the historically high price of meat and the needs of the Coptic Christian community, whose religion restrictions require essentially vegan diets for much of the year. Tea is the national drink of Egypt, and beer is the most popular alcoholic beverage. While Islam is the majority faith in Egypt, and observant Muslims tend to avoid alcoholic drinks are still readily available in the country. Pork consumption is also not allowed for Egyptian Muslims, and therefore is only allowed for Egyptian people who are not Muslims. Meal times typically occur later in the day, with lunch served between 1 and 4 p.m., and dinner between 8 and midnight. The following are a few of the culinary delights that await in Egypt. We have full madimas, widely viewed as the most popular street food in Egypt. This paste of mashed fava beans is flavored with olive oil and garlic. It is typically served from a large copper pot into the pockets of pita bread, and it is a quick and easy treat. You have falafel, which, unlike its chickpea-based Mediterranean counterpart, Egyptian falafel is made from mashed fava beans. Mixed with parsley and shaped into disc and deep fried, it is often served again with pita bread and a salad. Koshari is the blend of macaroni pasta, Egyptian fried rice, brown lentils, and vermicelli is regarded as the national dish of Egypt. Topped with chickpeas, tangy tomato sauce, and garlic vinegar, and potatoes, baked in wood fire ovens and served in half. They can be eaten plain or topped with nuts, caramel sauce, chocolate sauce, or ice cream. Sorry, I just combined two things there. Topped with crispy fried onions, is beloved comfort food with the restaurants dedicated exclusively to it. Shawarma, and then we have shawarma over here. Now for Egyptian desserts, which is the bottom row, are known for their delicate blend of flavors and combination of ingredients, like honey, dates, nuts, and rosewater. We have semsemia, a traditional dessert. It is a toasted sesame brittle that crunches in your mouth with bursts of bold and nutty flavor. Baklava, the much-loved dessert from the Mediterranean. Baklava consists of phyllo dough with a sweet filling of ground nuts, such as almonds or pecans, and then is drenched with a homemade syrup. Om Ali, meaning mother of Ali, is Egyptian bread pudding. It is made from layers of puff pastry soaked in milk and mixed nuts, raisins, coconut flakes, and sugar, and then baked. The combination of sweet dough and hot milk makes for a delicious blend of flavors. And then sweet potatoes are a popular street food and dessert. It is the sweet potatoes that are baked in wood fire ovens and served in half. That could be eaten plain or topped with nuts, caramel sauce, chocolate sauce, or ice cream. Finally, we arrive in Luxor. Luxor has frequently been characterized as the world's greatest open-air museum, as the ruins of the Egyptian temple complexes of Karnak and Luxor stand within the modern city. Historically known as Thebes, it is among the oldest continuously inhabited cities in the world. Immediately opposite, across the Nile, lies monuments, temples, and tombs of the West Bank Theban necropolis, including the Valley of the Kings and Valley of the Queens. Thousands of tourists from all around the world arrive annually to visit Luxor's monuments, contributing greatly to the economy of the modern city. The Valley of the Kings is an ancient burial ground used for over 500 years as the final resting place for Egyptian pharaohs and nobles. Of its 62 tombs, some of the ones open to the public include that of Ramses IV, III, and King Tutankhamun, whose tomb is the only one to have escaped looters. Although the exteriors are unassuming, the well-preserved interiors are remarkable for their intricately painted murals. Be prepared to descend steep steps to visit these subterranean chambers. Luxor Temple was constructed around 1400 BC. It is famed for its sphinx-lined avenue, known as the Path of God. It is dedicated to the rejuvenation of kingship and honored the gods Amun, Mut, and Khonshu. Many pharaohs were crowned here, and it continues to serve as a place of worship today. The Valley of the Queens is a site in Egypt in which queens, princes, princesses, and other high-ranking officials were buried from roughly 1560 BC to 1130 BC. The Valley of Queens was known anciently as Tatset Neferu, which is the double meaning of place of beauty and or the place of the royal children. Excavation of the tombs at the Valley of Queens was pioneered by Ernesto Schiaparelli and Francisco Ballerini in the early 1900s. The Valley of the Queens consists of the main wadi, which contains most of the tombs, along with the Valley of Prince Amus and the Valley of the Rope, the Valley of the Three Pits, and the Valley of Dolmen. The main wadi contains 91 tombs, and the subsidiary valleys add another 19. The burials in the subsidiary valleys all date to the 18th dynasty. The reason for choosing the location of the Valley of the Queens as a burial site is not known. The close proximity to the workers' village of Deir el-Medina in the Valley of Kings may have been a factor. Another consideration could have been the existence of the sacred grotto dedicated to Hathor at the entrance of the valley. This grotto may have been associated with the rejuvenation of the dead. The tomb of Nefertari is situated in the Valley of the Queens. Nefertari, the favorite queen of Pharaoh Ramses II, and he went out of his way to make it obvious, referring to her as the one for whom the sun shines in his writings. She was buried 3,200 years ago. Her tomb, discovered in 1904, is well worth the extra charge for the visit. Her tomb once held the mummified body and representative symbolisms of her, consistent with most Egyptian tombs of the period. Now, everything has been looted except for 2/3 of the 5,200 square feet of wall paintings, from which here we see an example. These wall paintings characterize Nefertari's character. Her face received particular attention to emphasize her beauty, especially the shape of her eyes, and her blush of her cheeks and her eyebrows. Some paintings were full of lines and colors of red, blues, yellows, and greens that portrayed exquisite directions to navigating through the afterlife to paradise. The Karnak Temple is within walking distance of the Luxor Temple. It was developed during the New Kingdom period, during which most of the pharaohs reigned. It is Egypt's largest gathering of temple complexes.
Luxor's other great site, another magnificent temple complex, is best enjoyed early in the morning, beating the heat and crowds. An avenue of battered sphinxes leads to the awe-inspiring main entrance, heralding the temples of Karnak. Karnak was the most important place of worship in all Egypt. Back when Luxor was Egypt's capital, this sprawling complex of temples was dedicated to the grandiose Holy Family, a trinity of gods, Amun, Mut, and Khonshu. It was built over many centuries throughout this New Kingdom period when most of the great and famous kings ruled. The Great Court is the largest single area of the complex. It was used once a year for an elaborate festival feast celebrating fertility. Fertility of the land, the people, and the kingdom. The great hypostyle hall with over 100 columns is one of the grandest religious structures ever built. Its forest of columns represents papyrus plants, bulging stems and flowering capitals, each elaborately carved and once brightly painted. The many columns of this vast hall once supported a stone ceiling. You can measure the architectural sophistication of a society by the distance it can span between columns. This was the best they could do 3,000 years ago. The columns were fat and close together, making the gap easier to span.
Imagine what it took to build all this. They had to design it, quarry the stones, ship them, stack them, smooth them, carve them, paint them, all for the glory and favor of the gods. Consider the depth of the faith. This was not for the public. It was only to be seen by the royals, the priests, and the gods.
Obelisks symbolically connected Earth with the gods. These are monolithic and carved out of a single piece of granite. They were quarried about 100 miles south of here in Aswan and then shipped down the Nile. This one's been standing here for about 3,000 years.
Like church spires and minarets, an obelisk marked a holy place. There are only about 60 in existence. A few still mark their original Egyptian temples, but more decorate the great squares of Europe, taken there through the ages by European conquerors.
As you venture farther into the complex, things get older and crescendo in religious importance. Everything at Karnak leads to a small chamber that marks the very heart of the temple complex, the Holy of Holies.
This was the most sacred spot in all of Egypt. On this pedestal sat a statue of the top god, Amun-Ra. Amun-Ra was the god of Luxor, the god of empire, Egypt's god of gods.
Okay. We return to our boat to travel 5 more days down the river to the city of Aswan, our final destination. Aswan, known as Swanet in ancient times, dates back more than 4,500 years. It was a key trading hub connecting Egypt's southern and northern regions. It was renowned for gold, ivory, and traditional crafts such as beadwork, clay art, and embroidery. The stone quarries of ancient Egypt located here were celebrated for their stone, and especially for the granite rock called syenite. They furnished the colossal statues and obelisks and monolithic shrines that are found throughout Egypt, including the pyramids, and the traces of the quarrymen who worked alongside domesticated draft animals in these 3,000 years ago are still visible in the native rock. The Aswan High Dam, completed in the 1970s after a decade of construction, is an engineering marvel. It provides nearly half of Egypt's electricity and controls the flow of the Nile River. The Aswan Dam is one of the world's largest embankment dams, which was built across the river between 1960 and 1970. When it was completed, it was the tallest earthen dam in the world. The dam, which created the Lake Nasser Reservoir, was built 7 kilometers upstream of the Aswan Low Dam, which had been completed in 1902 and was already at its maximum utilization. Construction of the High Dam became a key objective of the military regime that took power following the 1952 Egyptian Revolution. With its ability to better control flooding, provide increased water storage for irrigation, and generate hydroelectricity, the dam was seen as pivotal to Egypt's planned industrialization. Like the earlier implementation, the High Dam has had a significant effect on the economy and culture of Egypt. The dam was designed by Nikolai Malashev of the Moscow-based Hydro Project Institute. Designed for both irrigation and power generation, the dam incorporates a number of relatively new features, including a very deep grout curtain below its base. Although the reservoir will eventually silt in, even the most conservative estimates indicate the dam will give at least 200 years of service. The Abu Simbel complex is a remarkable site of 2 temples built by Ramses II. Carved into the mountainside, it immortalizes Ramses and the gods he worshipped. The temples were threatened by submersion during the construction of the high dam and relocated to higher ground between 1964 and 1968. This staggering feat of engineering involved cutting the temple into pieces, moving the pieces 65 meters, and reassembling them precisely. The Umbo Temple, located north of Aswan, was built during the Ptolemaic period. It is dedicated to Sobek, the crocodile god, and Horus the Elder, the falcon-headed god. In ancient times, live crocodiles were kept in a chamber within the temple and were mummified after they died. The museum next to the temple displays these 22 of these mummified crocodiles. And then the Philae Temple, built in 690 BC, was originally located on the Philae Islands. It was relocated to Agilkia Island to protect it from submersion from the construction of the dam. Today, surrounded by lush vegetation, it stands as an extraordinary example of ancient Egyptian architecture. Now comes the audience participation portion of the program. Before I put you all on a plane back home to Maryland, we have some trivia questions. So, while the Nile River is most often associated with Egypt, the river flows through 11 countries in total. How many of these can you name? Who knows their African geography? Feel free to unmute or put yourself in the chat. Okay. Well, so the 10 other countries aside from Egypt are Burundi, Rwanda, Tanzania, Uganda, Kenya, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Ethiopia, Eritrea, South Sudan, and Sudan. All right. True or false? Egypt has just 2 main seasons. Someone in the chat says false. Well, it is true. So yes, technically, yes, they still do have a winter, spring, summer, fall. It is mainly summer and winter. Egypt experiences a hot summer from May all the way through October and a mild winter from November through April. So if you want reasonable temperatures, travel there between November and April. Though the Nile is said to be the longest river in the world, some scientists argue that another river is slightly longer. Which one? The Amazon is correct. Good job. The debate happens depending where you start measuring the Amazon. But most people and researchers consider the Nile River to be the longest river on Earth. All right. The Luxor Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas is home to a replica of the Great Sphinx of Giza. True or false? The replica at the Luxor Hotel in Las Vegas is larger than the original Sphinx in Giza. True or false? We have 2 people in the chat are saying false. Surprisingly, it's true. The replica stands 110 feet taller, at 110 feet tall, 46 feet taller than the original Sphinx in Giza? All right. And now our last trivia question. What famous U.S. landmark was originally intended for Egypt's Suez Canal? Anyone? Well, despite its like being such an icon of the U.S., the Statue of Liberty was originally intended to be placed in Egypt's Suez Canal. When French sculptor Frederic Auguste Bartholdi created a statue of a woman dressed in robes and holding a torch, he called it Egypt Bringing Light to Asia and envisioned it standing at the entrance of the Suez Canal. When the project was canceled, he was commissioned to build it in New York Harbor instead, and it was renamed Liberty Enlightening the World. All right. Well, that is all the trivia I have for you. Thank you all for participating in this armchair travel and trivia. Who wants to go to Egypt now? Patricia does. All right. Well, Patricia, you and me will look for travel deals. Okay. All right. Well, thank you all for joining. I hope you all have a wonderful Friday afternoon, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was fun.
Yeah,
Great.
thank you for
Thank
the
you.
cruise.